Hello. This sermon audio is a ministry of the Town Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. If you would like to learn more about us, how to connect, or how to support us, go to our website, thetownchurch.org. While listening to the Bible preached is a healthy part of our spiritual formation, it is not the whole picture. So if you aren't a part of a local church, we encourage you to prayerfully commit to a local body of believers where you live. We're glad you can join us, and we hope God uses the following sermon to reveal more of His glory to you.
Good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. I'll follow up on what Josh said. It is good to have time together with everyone here, the church family, this morning. My name is Vince. I am one of the elders here at the church. I'm on staff as well as one of the pastors. So if we haven't met, I would love to meet you. I know there are some faces I don't recognize, but that may just be my failing memory also. So if that's you and I failed to remember who you are, then I am sorry. If you have your Bible, go ahead and grab it and turn to the book of Joshua. We have been working through the book of Joshua since March, and we will continue to do that. Let me catch us up to where we are in the book. We're in chapter 22 this morning, so if you want to get there, chapter 22. If you don't have a Bible, there's no greater gift that we could give you as a church than the Word of God. So back on the back table, there's a whole stack of Bibles. We'd love to give you one if you don't have one. If you want one of the Joshua journals, they're there for you too. You can take one of those. Let me catch us up to where we are. This is like the recap at the beginning of your favorite episode, your favorite show that you're watching, like that episode last time on, right, the book of Joshua. Here's what happened. Moses has died. We're going way back. Moses has died. Joshua is their new leader with the significant task of leading the people, thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people into a land that had been promised to them by God hundreds of years previous. God had commissioned Joshua to move forward, called him to be strong and courageous, promised that he would be with him wherever he went. He told Joshua that the land was already theirs. They just needed to move forward in faith, and God would hand it over to them. So region after region, city after city, area after area, the people of God moved forward and wiped out nations with God's power, God being with them, and they received the land that God had given them. This is a promise kept. God had promised this, He's keeping it. Friends, does God always keep His promises? Yes, always. He's faithful. So all of the land has been distributed to the tribes. All of the cities have been given over to this tribe of priests. Remember, Levi, the Levites, so that they would oversee and continue to mediate the worship of God. These 6 cities have been distributed by name for cities of refuge for those seeking safety and to await the justice of God to be declared over them. God keeps His promises. Every last one of them. That's how chapter 21 ends. That's how we ended out last week. If you remember the very last, I'm hanging on to that very last verse of chapter 21 where it says, not one of all of the good promises that the Lord had made to Israel failed. Every promise came to pass. Every last one of them. That's God. That's who God is. That's our God. He's not hey, I've got some things, maybe I'll keep some promises, I don't know. No, He keeps every last one. And so He's called His people to be faithful as well. He's called them to be faithfully obedient and faithfully committed to worship Him. And so that's where we are in Joshua, and it brings to mind this question for me as I've thought through chapter 22. And really as I've thought through the entire series. If God has shown His faithfulness, and He's called us to be faithful to Him, what unites us as His followers? What unites us? Let me rephrase it just more simply. What ought to unite us as followers of God? What ought to unite us as followers of God? There's so much disunity in our world right now. There's fracturing, there's splintering all over. Just think back on the last few years. Things have been absurd. to cause disunity, to cause distraction, to cause a bunch of conflict. If we would have said 5 years ago that someone has suspected that we would all be in a great deal of disunity as a church over whether or not we ought to wear a mask over our face and sit 6 feet apart from one another. If someone would have said that 5 years ago, we all would have laughed. But it's caused disunity, caused some conflict. It's caused some splintering even in the church. If someone would have told you 5 years, 10 years ago that there would be conflict in the church about whether or not people should be vaccinated or not, like that would creep into the church, you would have maybe not laughed, but you would have thought, probably not, but maybe. And it's happened, and it's caused disunity, and it's caused conflict, and related even to some recent events about the Supreme Court ruling on abortion. Had someone told me 10, 15 years ago that there would be a significant decision overturning Roe, we may have believed it, but probably not. We may have thought, maybe, there's a slim possibility, but I doubt any of us would have said, maybe I'm wrong here, I doubt any of us would have said, that's going to cause conflict in the church, in the church. But it has. We could go on with lots of things: sexuality, gender, racism, all on and on and on and on. All of these things have caused conflict and disunity in the church. We're not talking about out there, although we are, in the church. So many things have broken. And so let me ask the question again. If God has shown his faithfulness to us, and he has, and he has called us to be faithfully obedient to him, and he has, then what unites us as followers? What pulls us together as followers of God? Could I suggest the reason there has been so much conflict and disunity in the church over the last years is because, at least in part, so many people, sometimes myself included, probably you as well, so many people in the church are trying to find unity in things rather than in the worship of the holy God who's called us to be a part of his people. We've tried to find unity in this thing or that thing, and hey, can we be unified here? Can we be unified around this one thing? In other words, I'll put it this way. When the starting point for our unity is something other than the worship of God, when our starting point for unity is something other than the worship of the God of the Bible, we will always find ways to disagree. We will always find ways to have conflict. We will always find ways to argue and critique and fight and move further and further away from God-honoring unity. As followers of God, we must be unified around the right worship of God. That includes what we do here on Sunday, but it also includes what we do throughout the week, and it includes our obedience to God and his word, not our feelings. Friends, there is too much going on in the world for the church family to be fractured. There's too much going on in your life for it to feel like, I don't know who's safe to talk to in this place. You know, disunity is not just a problem of 2022 or 2021 or 2020. The people of God who have experienced the promises of God being kept in the giving of this long-awaited land also struggled to be unified. They wanted to be faithfully obedient to the God who had shown his faithfulness to him, but they struggled to be unified. Can we look at chapter 22 together? Look at verse 1. Let me read the first 9 verses. It says, at that time, everything that we had said already that has happened. At that time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh and said to them, "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days down to this day. but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers, as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and to walk in all his ways and to keep his commandments and to cling to him and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half, Joshua had given a possession beside their brothers in the land west of the Jordan. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, "Go back to your tents with much wealth, with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh, hear this, it's got to be sweet, returned home, parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. Here's what I think we see first in these first 9 verses, a commendation of faithfulness. There's a commendation, there's some encouragement about the faithfulness of the people. The 2.5 tribes from the east side of the Jordan River, if you remember this all the way back, they were called into action all the way back in chapter 1. They were about to take what was on the west side of the Jordan. They said, hey, we're going to need your help. They'd already been given their land. The people on the east side had already been given their land, but Joshua calls them to action to be a part of the surge forward into the land of the west side of the Jordan. If you remember all the way back to those chapters, you'll remember that what we highlighted in that moment was that there was unity. They came together around a purpose. They were moving forward. They wanted to go forth, and they were called by God through Joshua to be a part of what God was going to do. There was unity. The people of God working together to accomplish what God was commending them to do. Now listen, I was talking to a few staff members yesterday about whether or not I was going to be here or not. How these weeks were going to go, months were going to go, and I told a couple different people there is no way that we'll be able to make it through what we're walking through right now without the community around us. There's no way. There's no way. Similarly, the people of God moving forward to receive the land that God was giving them could only happen if they were unified. So the east came to help out the west, and they moved forward. And so Joshua, their leader, at the end of all of that, everything's been distributed, their leader commends the faithfulness of the people. He commends them. These 2.5 tribes, he just gushes over them. Verse 2, you've done everything Moses commanded of you. You've done everything I've commanded you. And they're speaking from God. Verse 3, you've not forsaken your brothers. You've come to their aid. You could have said, we got ours, now we're out. We're not coming to help. You could have said that. But they didn't. They were together in this. Verse 4, now because of your help, the Lord, I want you to see that. Verse 4, now because of your help, the Lord has given rest to your brothers as he had promised. But it was a part of you being there, a part of it. Verse 5, so now go back to your homes. Only be careful to do all that the Lord commands, to love God, to walk in all of his ways, to keep his commandments. And listen, did you see this wording? It's powerful. I want you to see it. Kirsten pointed it out to me this morning. It's been the only thing that we can hang on to. What's the wording? Cling to him. Cling to God. Sometimes that's all we can do, isn't it? Cling to God. What's the next part? And serve him. The same word, and worship him. Cling to God and worship him. And then in verse 6 and following, Joshua blesses them. He sends them back home with the spoils of the battle, the livestock, the silver, the gold, the bronze, the iron, and clothing. I love that. They're like hitting up the West Side H&M, right? Just taking it all back. It'll all fall apart in 2 days, but it's fine. It's H&M. You can get it for the same price again tomorrow. So the battles were over, And the people were commended for their faithfulness. Joshua, their leader, commends the people from the east side of the Jordan for their faithfulness to God. Now, can I encourage us here, challenge us here? Can we not take for granted the faithfulness of those around us? Can we not just assume that the people around us ought to be faithful, so just keep being faithful? Do it. Keep going. What if instead, here's my encouragement, what if instead we were very intentional, very purposeful, and regularly acknowledging aloud the faithfulness of the people around us? Think through that. What if we saw it, acknowledged it, highlighted it, said, hey, you've been faithful. Hey, I know that you're walking through some hard things right now, and things are devastating, but you've been faithful. You've not turned. You've been obedient even when I know you probably wanted to give up. You've been obedient. You've endured with your eyes fixed on Jesus. Or, hey, I know the temptations that are lurking around every corner for you. You've confided in me, and you've talked about the temptations that are there, and I know they seem impossible to withstand, but by God's grace, friend, you are resisting them. You're being faithful. If we commended people like that, or hey, I know you've experienced some sweet victories recently. You've prospered and you have a lot to celebrate, and you've consistently pointed the attention not to yourself, but back to God. You're showing yourself to be a faithful follower of God. Would you think about those in your circle in that way this week? Who around you has been faithful? You've seen it. Would you do this? Would you reach out to them and intentionally speak truth over them about the work of God you see in them? You've been faithful. And the faithfulness that He's allowing them to walk in day by day, commend them. Speak it. We all need to be commended for the faithfulness that God is allowing us to experience. Can we be that kind of people? I want to be. Joshua commends the faithfulness of the people from the east side of the Jordan, and the people then show their faithfulness in action. It's their faithfulness in action. Starting in verse 10, we're going to read through all of this over time. So look at verse 10, we'll read through verse 20. Faithfulness in action. It gets a little confusing, so hang on, I'll explain it. And when they came to the region of the Jordan, that is, in the land of Canaan, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar of imposing size. And the people of Israel heard it said, behold, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built the altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region about the Jordan on the side that belongs to the people of Israel. And when the people of Israel heard of it, the whole assembly of the people of Israel gathered at Shiloh to make war against them. What? How's that faithfulness in action? Let's continue. Then the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel. It's getting serious, right? Every one of them the head of a family among the clans of Israel. And they came to the people of Reuben, the people of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and they said to them, thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what is this breach of faith that you have committed against the Lord of Israel, and turning away this day from following the Lord by building yourselves an altar this day in rebellion against the Lord? Have we not had enough of this, of the sin at Peor, from which even yet we have not cleansed ourselves, and for which there came a plague upon the congregation of the Lord, that you too must turn away this day from following the Lord? And if you too rebel against the Lord today, then tomorrow He will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel. But now, if the land of your possession is unclean, pass over it into the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take for yourselves a possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord or make us as rebels by building for yourselves an altar on the other than the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan the son of Zerah break faith in this matter of the devoted things, and wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel? And he did not perish alone for his iniquity. We'll stop there. This is faithfulness in action. Let me explain. It's faithfulness in action from two different groups of people. On the surface, it may look like conflict, and in part it is. It may look like disunity, and in part it is. But in its roots, it is faithfulness in action. Here's how. The people of the 2.5 tribes of the east side start making their way back home. They stop just shy, still on the west side of the Jordan, right near its banks, and they set up an altar, we're told in verse 10, an altar of imposing size. Love that. All right, more on that later. We'll get to that. Simply put, for now, what we see here is the faithfulness of the east tribes. This is faithfulness. Acknowledging that God was at work. So they set up an altar between the east and the west, tribes as a sign of unity between the two. We're going to put this up as a sign of unity. Unity centered around what? God and His faithfulness and all that He had done. This is faithfulness in action. God has been faithful. We want to be faithful. Together, let's look to God. He is faithful. That's what they're doing. However, as soon as the tribes from the west side see what the east side tribes have done, they step forward in active faithfulness as well. You may be scratching your head thinking, how's this active faithfulness? Here's how. We're told that the people of Israel gathered at Shiloh to make war against the east tribes. And in fact, they send leaders from every tribe. All of these leaders, they come and they say, hey, all of us are saying this together. What have you done? You've committed sin against God by turning away from Him and building up this altar. So let me explain what's going on here before we move forward. By God's command, back in Leviticus 17, verses 8 through 9, you can read it sometime this week, there was only one place that sacrifices could be made. And that one place was at the tent of meeting. And that tent of meeting was where? At least for the time, at Shiloh. And there was only one altar at that one tent of meeting. And so in Leviticus 17, we're told that if anyone offers an offering anywhere, but where they were, right there at that tent of meeting, that altar, then they should be cut off from God's people. There is only one altar. So in the minds of the people on the west, in their minds, the west side of the Jordan, if there was another altar built, it must be to offer sacrifices to a pagan god. That must be what is going on. And if that's the case, then punishment needed to be brought in the form of war against the offender. They needed to be cut off. The people of the west side were revealing, here it is, their faithfulness in action. It really was. It was their faithfulness to keep God's people pure. Something had to be done to shut out anything that wasn't faithfulness to God. The people had already experienced God's disapproving discipline and His disapproval in what they had done. They said, we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like what we've experienced in the past. And so they bring up some historical reminders. Remember Peor? What's happened there? Numbers 25, we see that there was this worship of Baal, and what had happened, God in His anger comes against them, and a plague kills 24,000 people. We don't want to be like that. They also say we don't want the same thing that happened to Achan and his family. Joshua chapter 7, we talked about that several weeks ago. Because of his sin, he was killed along with his family. So we have examples of what goes down if we don't take care of this. You're turning away from God. So this is their faithfulness in action as well from the west side. The very thing, though, that the east side was trying to do, the symbol of unity because of God being between the two, backfired, didn't it? And it caused division among the sides of the river. Division carried out from the west side trying to start war with them. But both sides were acting out in what they thought at the time was faithfulness to God. Now, can we commend both sides? Right? I think we can. One wanted a symbol of unity between them because of God's faithfulness between them. They wanted a symbol of faithfulness. He set up stones to mark a moment to say, yep, God's been faithful. And one wanted purity among them, to be a people devoted to worshiping only God. And so we're going to make sure that that happens. But do you see what's happening? I think it's similar to what's happened over the last couple of years. They both wanted something very similar for God to be honored, for God to be worshiped. The problem was that there was misunderstanding, right? There was some large assumptions made. You know what happens there, right? Let me just stop there and say, how many problems in the church between God's people could be resolved with clear communication, no assumptions of motive being made about the end goal? How many problems could be resolved if we had clear communication together, that we listened well to one another, that we weren't making assumptions about the motives of the other person, and we just listened, especially when the end goal is the worship of God? That was the end goal of both of them. Listen, if our end goal is not the ongoing, overwhelming worship of God, can I be so bold to say there will always be conflict and disunity because it's not about God, it's about self. And look, there are 200 selves in here. There has to be a united vision of the worship of God being primary in everything. Listen, maybe you, even your strongest opinion, everything else has got to be secondary. Please, friends, can we together commit to taking everything back to the worship of God? So let's just start there, and we'll move out from that. Our opinions about ministry methods, our opinions about church leadership and what they ought to do and what they ought not to do and who they should be, our opinions about music styles, our opinions about how we preach. I say we, so it takes it off of me. How we preach. Our opinions about what coffee we serve. And on, right? We could just go on and on. You probably have some of those things as well. They have to be secondary to the overwhelming task of worshiping our holy God. Can we get on the same page? But for the people in Joshua 22, there were assumptions made, right, about motive. Isn't that so often the problem? Just assumptions about motive, what's going on, assumptions. Well, clearly the reason you built this altar of imposing size was so you could worship pagan idols, pagan gods. That was the assumption being made. So the people on the east side explain. Look at verse 21. I say explain, not defend. They're explaining. There's a difference. Look at verse 21. Then the people of Reuben, the people of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh said in answer to the heads of the families of Israel, the mighty one, God, the Lord. For those in the back, the mighty one, God, the Lord, He knows. And let Israel itself know. If it was in rebellion or in breach of faith against God, do not spare us today for building an altar to turn away from following the Lord. Or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or peace offerings on it, may the Lord Himself take vengeance. No, but we did it from fear, that in time to come your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You people of Reuben and people of Gad, you have no portion in the Lord. So your children might make our children cease to worship the Lord. Therefore we said, let us now build an altar, not for burnt offerings nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you, and between our generations after us, that we do perform the service of the Lord in His presence with our burnt offerings and sacrifices and peace offerings. So your children will not say to our children, in time to come, you have no portion in the Lord. just like children, isn't it? How many times have you caught your children saying that? You have no portion in the Lord. And we thought, if this should be said to us or to our descendants in time to come, we should say, behold, the copy of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away this day from following the Lord by building an altar for burnt offering, grain offering, sacrifice, other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. Here's what we see in this. There's a faithful fear. There's a faithful fear. Let me explain what I mean here. The people answer, they give explanation to, they don't defend. They're giving explanation to the assumptive accusation, saying twice in verse 21, the mighty one, God, the Lord, he knows our hearts. He knows our hearts. He knows the real story. He does not have to assume because he knows why we built this altar. We did not do it to worship pagan gods or to turn away from God. If so, God himself can come after us. No, instead, look at verse 24. Instead, we built this altar out of fear. We built this altar out of fear. Fear of what? That in the days to come, we would be forgotten over here on the east side. In future days, the next generations would argue against a unified people of God because they'll have forgotten us over here. They'll argue against a unified people of God. Oh no, those people over there believe something different. They're not with us. And that starts with kids and how it spreads out among the people. We don't want that to happen. Let me give some context of what's going on. Many scholars have said that the Jordan River Valley, because we can't comprehend this. The Jordan River Valley is this massive disconnect between these tribes, at least at this point in history. This isn't like us standing on one side of the Poudre River, right, waving 25 feet, saying, hey, come over for dinner. And somebody says, okay, and they get on that bridge right next to them and they walk over and we have dinner 4 minutes later. It's not like that. The scholars would say that back in this time, the challenge of travel was more like traveling between two planets for the people. This valley was something vast that really divided them. There's a good chance that if someone moves to Mars, we won't see them again. Not because it's so far away, but because it probably won't go well, right? Just joking. We won't see them again. And so this is what's going on. There was fear of the east side tribes, but deeper than that, there was a fear. Here's what the fear is deeper than that. The fear was that they wouldn't be a unified people of God together. I'll tell you, pastorally, the fear of mine, that we wouldn't be a unified people together. That was their fear. And so they say, we've been through so much. God has called us to be his people. He's promised us this land. That's the faithfulness of God. We want to be faithfully united as a people. That's why we did what we did. Additionally, many scholars will say that this altar of imposing size supports the explanation that they just walked through. They built an altar big enough to be seen from both sides of the river. So instead of it being an altar, it was more like a roadside attraction. You've maybe seen that, right? We're in the West. I don't know why all the weirdos come out here. But here's what we see, right? The world's largest prairie dog in Oakley, Kansas. Probably seen that. The world's largest bison in Jamestown, North Dakota. Carhenge, maybe you've seen that, right? In Alliance, Nebraska. It was more like, to them, it was more like a roadside attraction than an altar where they would have offerings up to God. Their intention was never to use it as an altar. That's why they say in verse 26, let's build an altar, not for burnt offering nor sacrifice, but to be a witness between us, so that people in future generations will say, this is the very thing that unites them. They gather around this very thing, the worship of God, down to the end of verse 29. We don't intend to offer any worship except for at the altar that stands at the tabernacle. We're not going to do it. This is just a witness between us. That's why I say this is faithful. It's a faithful fear. This isn't a scared, like we're running to hide. This is a faithful fear. We want to be a faithful people of God, united together. The people of the eastern tribes want so badly to be united around the faithful worship of God that they erect an altar of imposing size to stand as a reminder of the faithfulness of God and the truth that He's worthy to be worshiped. And so the people of the east side, they see this unified worship of God as something to hold on to. We can't let this slip out of our hands. We've seen God do so much, and our kids are going to be wondering and fighting back and forth, and they're fearful that this is slipping away from them. No, we've got to be a unified people. Friends, can I ask this, and I'm not trying to shame. How often are we fearful that unity among us might be slipping away? Have you ever laid in bed at night ever thinking about that? Maybe you have. I'll tell you I have. I think we as elders have felt that, or maybe this way, as long as I'm able to have my individualized relationship with God, I don't know that I really care that much about unity. Maybe we've landed there. How untrue that is, though. It's not an individualized relationship with God. While you've been called a child, singular, to God the Father, that's true, we're called as a people together. We need one another. Our worship is a witness to one another that God is our God. You being here on a Sunday, singing praises, praying with others, learning from God's word, encouraging others, is a witness one to another that God is our God. The witness together. That's how the chapter closes. Look at verse 30. We'll finish this out. When Phinehas the priest and the chiefs of the congregation, the heads of the families of Israel who were with him, heard the words of the people of Reuben, and the people of Gad and the people of Manasseh spoke, it was good in their eyes. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the people of Manasseh, "Today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you have not committed this breach of faith against the Lord. Now you have delivered the people of Israel from the hand of the Lord." Then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the chiefs returned from the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan to the people of Israel and brought back word to them. And the report was good in the eyes of the people of Israel. And the people of Israel blessed God and spoke no more of making war against them to destroy the land where the people of Reuben and the people of Gad were settled. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad called the altar, its name is this, they called the altar Witness. For they said, "It is a witness between us that the Lord is God." We've seen this commendation of faith from Joshua to the people. We've seen the faithfulness in action, faithful fear, and now we have this faithful witness. The two sides of the river reconcile. They get communication worked out. Sorry about the assumptions. I was wrong on it. We don't know how that all went. Hopefully it went like that. Sorry about the assumptions. Oh, no big deal. We've done that too, right? And so let's just bring this all together. Assumptions have been clarified. Together they call this altar what? Witness. Because its very presence shows that God is the God between them, unifying them, causing them to be faithful together. The altar is the very thing giving way to the opportunity to show that they are unified around the same God, the one true God. Friends, we recognize this, that our worship of God is a witness between us that God is God? Can I say that again? That our worship of God is a witness between us that God is our God. Let me play something out for us. Can you imagine if the people had actually gone to war over assumptions made, miscommunication, and unresolved conflict? Can you imagine how damaging that would have been? If the people would have said, "That's what they're doing, let's go get them," and war happened, can you imagine what would have happened to their witness to one another, to their relationships with one another, if assumptions would have been made, no conflict would have been resolved, and those assumptions would have stood? Can you imagine what would have happened? Let's push this even further. Can you imagine, had they gone to war unresolved, what would have happened to their witness, to the onlooking world around them? As the world looks in, these people are fighting over the same God. Like, we can see it from miles away, right? They certainly aren't devoted to this God in the same kinds of ways if they're making assumptions and just going after one another. Hopefully you see where I'm going here. It's the same with us, isn't it? That we can't be in this place of moving toward war, so to speak, with assumptions being made, miscommunication being there, and unresolved conflict, saying, well, that's what I believe about them, and that's final. Instead, our faith is bolstered by the faith of those around us. Our faith is encouraged along by others who are also moving toward the worship of God. Our faith increases as we come together in a safe environment, knowing that others around us aren't looking for ways to make assumptions of us and harshly criticize us. Our faith is bolstered in that, but add to that an outward-facing element. Our faith together as a church is a witness not just to us, but the world is looking in, saying they can't even get along with one another. We can't have that happen. In fact, I'll close it out here. Do you remember what Jesus said to his disciples in John 13? I think we need to hear this. We need to believe it. We need to see it as true. It is true. It says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you." Don't skip by that. How did he love? He gave his life. He gave up his position for a time. He gave it up, humbled himself. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. All people will know that. Friends, the world's watching. What do they see? Do they see a desperate desire to worship at the feet of Jesus because he's shown his love toward us? Do they see a deep love for one another that overlooks offenses and allows room for differing opinions, especially on secondary matters? Do they see a deep love for one another that overlooks, that can show some grace? Or do they see in us a readiness to divide over nearly everything, leaving no room for grace? For a possibility that there may be a misunderstanding, for different perspectives. By our love for one another, people will know we are followers of Jesus. God is faithful. He's called us to be faithful as well. Are we faithful witnesses to one another and to the outside world watching in? This is the truth of the gospel. And I would say the truth of the gospel in this is at stake. The very gospel that we celebrate week after week after week as we come to these tables, which is where we'll go now. That Jesus gave his life so that we would be reconciled, that we would be brought back into right relationship with God. That's the kind of God we have, that he wants right relationship. Jesus gave his life so that we would be reconciled back into relationship. And we are also called to be ministers of reconciliation, love toward one another and the outside watching world. Jesus gave his life. His body was broken. His blood was shed so that we could have life with the God of the universe forever. All right, let's pray. God, we come to you this morning knowing that your word is true, that it is everything that is written in your word was written to teach us, that through the endurance of the Scripture and through its encouragement, we would have hope. And so even passages like this that don't really relate to us in what we're dealing with altars and river valleys and all of that, they relate to our hearts, because everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, even now, that we would have hope. And our hope is not in a thing. Our hope is in the hands of Christ, our King. Our hope can't be in a fix. Our hope can't even be in resolved conflicts. Our hope has got to be in the hands of Christ, our King. So God, we recognize that we stray from that so often, and I pray that you'd bring us back to be a people who would worship together in spirit and truth, unified around what we need to be unified around. That is, you are a God who's worthy to be worshiped. You've invited us in, called us to be worshipers. You've provided a way for us to be near you through the death, burial, resurrection, and ascension of your Son, Jesus. You've invited us in. By faith, we can enter. And so I pray that we would rally around those things, be unified around that, and that we would step forward into whatever you have in the coming days for us as a church. Help. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.